It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I found myself under the hood of a beat-up black sedan that belonged to Jason, a coworker my wife Amanda had been unusually friendly with lately. Fixing cars had always been my thing, a meditative retreat where my mind could find clarity. Amanda, however, had suggested I help Jason with his vehicle, claiming his car troubles were becoming a teamwork distraction at her office. I wasn't entirely sold on the idea, but Amanda had a way of insisting that made me feel like resisting her requests was petty. So, there I was, sleeves rolled up, engine grease on my hands, and an uneasy feeling in my gut I couldn't shake. The moment of discovery came when I slid my hand under the driver's seat to retrieve a fallen bolt. My fingers brushed against something soft and delicate. At first, I thought it was a misplaced cloth or maybe a forgotten cleaning rag, but as I pulled it into the daylight, I froze. A crimson-red pair of lace underwear. The world around me seemed to tilt. My first thought was denial. It couldn't be hers. It had to be a coincidence, right? But as the seconds stretched into eternity, the sinking realization hit me: I'd seen Amanda wear this exact pair not too long ago. The metallic tang of betrayal mingled with the scent of motor oil in the air. My mind began racing, piecing together fragments of Amanda's recent behavior, her sudden late-night work meetings, the way she always seemed to have her phone clutched in her hand, and the inexplicable distance that had grown between us. The evidence in my hands felt heavier than the car's transmission. My heart pounded with a mixture of rage and disbelief, and yet, a cold, calculated resolve began to form. If Amanda thought she could outmaneuver me, she was about to learn how wrong she was. With deliberate care, I placed the underwear back where I'd found it and continued working on the car as if nothing had happened. My mind, however, was spinning with plans. This wasn't going to end with an argument or a tear-filled discussion. No, Amanda and Jason had written their own story, and I was about to rewrite the ending. I finished fixing Jason's car with a calmness that felt unnatural, like the eye of a hurricane. My hands moved automatically, tightening bolts and checking connections, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. The crimson lace haunted me, flashing before my eyes every time I blinked. When Jason strolled over, grinning like we were old buddies, I had to clench my jaw to keep from knocking his teeth out right there. "Man, thanks for this, Alex." "Amanda said you're a wizard with cars," Jason said casually, leaning against the side of the sedan. "Amanda said." Her name coming out of his mouth made my stomach churn. But I played along. I smiled, nodded, even cracked a joke about Jason owing me a beer. I handed him his keys, watched him drive off, and walked back inside my house where Amanda was lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone. "Everything good with Jason's car?" she asked without even looking up. I stared at her, at the woman I had married, trusted, and shared my life with. She looked so casual, so normal. "Yeah, all good," I said, my voice steady. I needed more information. I needed to be absolutely sure before I confronted her. The underwear was damning, but I wanted their whole story, the dirty details, the lies, the timeline. That night, Amanda fell asleep quickly, her back turned to me, as usual. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities. Around 2 a.m., I slid out of bed, grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and walked into the bathroom. Her passcode was the same as always, our wedding date. The irony nearly made me laugh. I went straight to her messages. Nothing suspicious. Just casual chats with coworkers, including Jason. But something felt off. I switched to her emails. And there it was. A folder labeled work stuff. Hidden away were emails that painted a clear picture. Late-night plans disguised as client meetings, secret rendezvous during lunch breaks, and even one email where Jason mentioned how nervous he was that I might catch on soon. I felt like my chest was caving in. Every word I read felt like a dagger to the gut. I scrolled through their messages, seeing Amanda's flirtatious replies, her eagerness to meet him, the emojis she used, the same ones she used with me when we first started dating. When I closed her phone and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. My face was pale, my eyes bloodshot, and my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I had enough proof now. But still, I didn't wake her up. I didn't scream or shake her awake to demand answers. No, I had a plan. The next day, I called in sick to work. Amanda went about her morning routine, kissed me on the cheek, and said she'd have another late meeting that evening. I nodded, watching her walk out the door without a shred of guilt on her face. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my car keys and headed out. First stop, a lawyer's office. I wasn't going to be one of those guys who gets blindsided in divorce court. I laid everything out, every detail, every piece of evidence, and listened carefully as the lawyer explained my options. Second stop, Jason's workplace. I didn't walk in like a raging husband. No, I played it cool. I told the receptionist I was dropping off something Jason left in my car. She pointed me to his office. When I walked in, Jason looked up from his desk, confused. Alex? What's up, man? I closed the door behind me. Oh, nothing much. Just thought I'd drop by and say hi, and let you know I found something interesting under your car seat yesterday. His face went pale. He stammered something incoherent, but I wasn't listening anymore. You know, I continued, taking a step closer, you're lucky I'm not the kind of guy who solves problems with his fists. But don't think for a second that you're walking away from this without consequences. Jason was sweating now, stuttering apologies and excuses, but I didn't care. I turned and walked out of his office, leaving him with his guilt and whatever pathetic excuse he was about to tell himself. On the way home, I prepared myself for the final confrontation with Amanda. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to break things. But I was going to make sure she understood just how badly she had destroyed everything we had built together. As I parked the car in the driveway and walked into the house, I heard Amanda in the kitchen, humming to herself like nothing was wrong. She had no idea what was coming. I stepped into the kitchen, the door creaking behind me as I closed it softly. Amanda was standing by the counter, chopping vegetables for dinner, humming some cheerful tune like everything was normal. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, the weight of everything I had discovered hanging heavily on my chest. I took a deep breath, my mind sharpening, and then I spoke. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm, almost eerily so. She didn't turn around at first. The knife scraped against the cutting board as she sliced through the carrots. About what? She asked, her voice casual, her back still to me. I leaned against the doorway, watching her, my gaze burning with fury she couldn't yet see. About you and Jason, I said, and the words hit the air like a slap. Amanda froze mid-cut, the knife hanging in the air for a split second before it fell to the board with a soft thud. Slowly, she turned to face me, her expression a mask of confusion that quickly shifted into something more guarded. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice thin with an edge of disbelief. What is this about, Alex? I stepped forward, pulling my phone from my pocket and laying it on the counter between us. On the screen was the email, Jason's email, the one that mentioned how nervous he was that I might catch on soon. Amanda's eyes flickered to the phone, then back to me. The denial in her eyes was almost laughable. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off before she could spin her lies. No need to lie, Amanda, I said coldly. I've seen everything. The texts, the emails, the secret meetings. How long were you planning on keeping this from me? She shook her head, her lips tightening into a thin line. Alex, you don't understand. Don't I? I snapped, stepping closer. You think I'm stupid, don't you? You thought you could pull this off without me noticing, didn't you? Her face twisted, and for a moment, there was a flash of irritation in her eyes, the kind I hadn't seen before. It was like a mask slipped off, revealing something colder, something far more calculating beneath the surface. "Look, Alex," she began, her voice lowering into a more condescending tone, "I didn't mean for things to get this far. But you've been distant, okay? You've been so wrapped up in your own little world, and I needed something more. Jason gave me that. He understood me in ways you never could." The word stung, but I refused to let her see it. I stood there, unmoving, watching as she tried to justify her betrayal. "You think this is about me, don't you?" I said, my voice growing quieter but no less sharp. "You think this is my fault, that somehow I pushed you into the arms of another man? You really want to play that card?" Amanda crossed her arms, her face twisted with anger now. "I'm not blaming you, okay? But maybe if you weren't so busy fixing cars and doing whatever you do, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere to feel alive." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You couldn't have just communicated? You couldn't have talked to me? No, instead, you chose to screw someone else behind my back. You chose to lie, to sneak around like a coward." She was silent for a moment, her eyes shifting nervously. Then, in a move that caught me completely off guard, she flipped the script. Her face twisted into something more vicious, her voice rising to a mocking tone. "You know what, Alex," she said, stepping closer, her hands planted firmly on her hips. "You're so predictable. You act like this is some huge surprise. You've been useless in this marriage for years. Always acting like you're so high and mighty. But honestly, I'm glad it's over. It's pathetic that you're still standing here, acting like you didn't deserve it." I felt my heart lurch in my chest. Was she seriously blaming me for this? The audacity. The sheer lack of any empathy or remorse was staggering. "I gave you everything, Amanda," I said, my voice low, almost a growl. "I trusted you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me? Please," she sneered, rolling her eyes. "You've been checked out for ages. And guess what? So have I." Jason actually listens to me. He doesn't need to fix cars to feel like a man. He actually pays attention. It was like a punch to the gut. She didn't even care. There was no guilt, no hesitation. She was so disgustingly casual about it all, as if she hadn't just shattered the foundation of everything we'd built together. A bitter silence fell between us, thick and suffocating. I stood there, feeling like the ground beneath my feet was crumbling. "Fine," I said finally, my voice low and even. "I'm done. You and Jason can have each other. I won't beg for you to stay." Amanda's face flickered with something close to smug satisfaction, like she had just won some twisted game. "Good. I don't want you here anymore either." I turned on my heel, walking out of the kitchen, the weight of her words crashing over me. She hadn't even apologized. She hadn't even shown the slightest ounce of regret. And as much as it hurt, I knew it was over. There was no saving this. She had made her choice. I left the kitchen with Amanda's words echoing in my head, a constant drumbeat of betrayal and disdain. My heart felt like it was encased in stone, cold and heavy. The finality of it all hit me in waves. She had given up on us. She had already checked out. But as I walked toward the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite finished. Something inside me snapped, and I realized that I wasn't going to let her get away with this so easily. I couldn't just let her waltz out of this marriage without facing the consequences of her actions. I reached for my car keys, but I didn't head for the driveway. Instead, I drove straight to Jason's apartment. I needed answers, and I was done being polite. The hours of listening to Amanda's dismissive attitude had shattered whatever restraint I had left. Now, it was time for Jason to feel the full weight of my fury. When I pulled into the parking lot of his complex, I didn't waste time. I marched toward his building, the adrenaline surging through my veins, making every step feel like it had a purpose. As I approached his apartment door, I hesitated for only a second. But then I knocked, hard, 3 loud raps. The door creaked open, and there stood Jason, still dressed in his work clothes, looking surprised to see me. His eyes flickered to my clenched fists and then back to my face. "What are you doing here, Alex?" Jason asked, trying to sound casual, but his nervousness was palpable. I didn't waste a second on pleasantries. "I'm here to talk to you," I said, my voice low and lethal. "About you and my wife." His expression shifted. A flicker of guilt, maybe fear, crossed his face, but he quickly recovered. "Look, man, I don't know what you're thinking, but..." "Don't," I cut him off, taking a step closer. "Don't play dumb with me. I know what's been going on. I've seen the emails, the texts. I know about you and Amanda. So don't try to sugarcoat it or act like I'm just some guy with a misunderstanding." Jason shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "Alex, listen. I didn't mean for it to go this far, okay? It just kind of happened." He stepped back, looking at me like I was the one in the wrong. "You have to understand, things weren't good with you too. You were always gone, always busy. Amanda, she came to you, Jason," I said, cutting him off again. "You didn't have to entertain her. You didn't have to go along with it. But you did. You knew she was married. You knew the consequences, and yet you still played along. You've got no excuse for what you did." Jason's face flushed, and for a moment, I thought he might try to apologize, but then his expression hardened. "So what now, huh? You think you're gonna make me feel guilty about it? You think I'm gonna beg for forgiveness?" His tone was more defiant now, and I could feel my blood boiling. I wasn't here for his apologies. I wasn't here to make him feel anything. I was here to make him understand the damage he'd done. "I'm not here to beg for your apology, Jason," I said coldly. "I'm here to make sure you never forget what you've done. Because it's not just me you've screwed over. It's my life, my trust, my everything. And now, I want to make sure that you remember that. Every time you look at her, you'll know who you really took her from." His eyes flickered with something, remorse? Or maybe just the dawning realization that he hadn't walked away as clean as he thought. I took a step back, my fists unclenching as the anger burned through me like wildfire. "I want you to stay the hell away from her. You think you're gonna have her? Fine. But just know that it's not gonna be easy for either of you. I'll make sure of that." I turned and started walking away from his door, leaving him standing there, trying to process everything that had just happened. But something in the pit of my stomach told me that this wasn't over yet. Amanda had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I drove back home with my mind racing. The confrontation with Jason had been intense, but it hadn't given me the closure I was looking for. I knew Amanda's actions had cut me deeper than I could explain, but I also knew that I couldn't let it consume me. I had to take control. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment, letting the stillness wash over me. I needed to think, to clear my head. When I stepped out and walked toward the front door, the reality of everything that had happened hit me again. As I walked into the house, I found Amanda sitting on the couch, her face pale and unreadable. It was almost like she was waiting for me, knowing that the calm had come before the storm. "I talked to Jason," I said quietly, locking eyes with her. Her gaze shifted briefly before she glanced down at the floor. "And what did he say? Does it even matter?" I shot back. "You already made your decision. You already betrayed me, and now you want to play the victim. You don't get to control this anymore, Amanda." She looked up at me, her expression suddenly cold. "I don't owe you anything, Alex. We're done. And just like that, the finality of it all settled in. There was no going back. Her words cut through me like a razor blade. We're done. The finality in her voice echoed in my head, reverberating until all I could hear was the relentless hum of the silence that stretched between us. Amanda had made her decision. She had already moved on, and I was still standing here, trying to pick up the pieces of a life I thought I understood. I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the gnawing feeling of betrayal in my gut, but it was no use. You think it's that simple, Amanda? I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to keep it calm. You think you can just destroy everything and walk away without consequences? Her eyes narrowed, her lips curling into that familiar smug smirk I had come to loathe. Consequences? Please, Alex. You should have figured this out a long time ago. You've been checked out. I'm not sorry for what happened, and I'm certainly not going to beg you to stay in a marriage that hasn't been worth anything for years. Each word she spoke felt like a slap, each one ringing louder than the last. I could barely process her utter lack of remorse, the coldness that had replaced the woman I thought I knew. It was like a switch had flipped inside her, and I was staring at a stranger. You think I wasn't paying attention? I shot back, the hurt and rage blurring into one overwhelming emotion. I gave you everything. I worked hard, I was there when you needed me, and you repaid me by sleeping with another man. And now, you're telling me it's my fault? Amanda's laugh was sharp, mocking. Oh, please. Stop playing the victim, Alex. You didn't give me anything I wanted. I'm not going to apologize for finding someone who actually sees me. Jason listens to me, he cares about me, things you stopped doing years ago. I felt my hands tremble, fists clenching at my sides, but I stayed still. If I moved now, I would lose control. And I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Not anymore. Go ahead, I said quietly, almost too quietly. Keep lying to yourself. But I want you to understand something, Amanda. You'll never get another chance with me. This is it. I'm done. Her face faltered for just a second, a flicker of something, regret, maybe, but it was gone before I could register it. Fine, she said, her voice cold. I don't need you. I never needed you. You're just holding me back, Alex. Don't you get it? I stared at her for a long moment, taking in the woman who had once been my everything. There was nothing left in her eyes now but bitterness and entitlement. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me, but more than anything, I felt free. I turned away without another word, heading straight for the door. The weight of this entire ordeal hung on me like a 100-pound anchor, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I wasn't going to stay. I wasn't going to beg her to stay with me. The woman who I thought I loved was gone, and all that remained was a hollow shell. The door slammed behind me, and I found myself standing outside in the cold night air, my mind whirling. I didn't know where to go or what to do, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I had a sense of clarity. I needed to cut ties. I needed to let go of the past and rebuild. I didn't want revenge anymore. Revenge had been tempting, but I realized it wouldn't give me what I needed. The only thing that mattered now was moving forward. I drove around for hours, not knowing where I was going or what I was doing. I just needed to be away from the house, away from her. The memories of our time together, the vacations, the laughter, even the arguments, everything felt so distant now. It was like I had been living someone else's life. At some point, I ended up at a bar. It wasn't a fancy place, just a dimly lit dive bar with a handful of regulars scattered around. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and took a long sip. It burned all the way down, and for a moment, the pain seemed to dull. The world felt quieter here, away from Amanda's voice, away from the chaos of my mind. The bartender noticed the look in my eyes. Rough day, huh? I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I could feel the tension in my shoulders, the weight of everything that had happened, but I wasn't sure where to even begin. I didn't want to talk about Amanda. I didn't want to think about her anymore. I spent the next few hours in a haze, lost in my own thoughts, trying to make sense of what had happened. Every time I thought I had the situation figured out, another layer would peel away, and the picture would become more complicated. I was angry, but more than that, I felt empty. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And she had taken all of that and thrown it away without a second thought. As the night wore on, I found myself thinking about what I wanted next. What would my life look like without Amanda? Without the woman who had been my everything? I didn't know yet. But I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was done being afraid of what might happen next. It wasn't the end of my life. It wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of something new. The days after the confrontation with Amanda and Jason were a blur. My life, once anchored in a predictable routine, had turned upside down, and the world seemed to spin faster every day. I barely slept, my mind racing through thoughts of the past, the present, and the future. But there was something I hadn't expected to happen, something that would shake everything I thought I knew. I woke up one morning to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. Still groggy, I reached for it, blinking at the screen as I saw Amanda's name flash on the display. The last thing I wanted to do was answer her call, but part of me, some part one couldn't quite silence, felt a flicker of curiosity. What could she possibly want after everything that had happened? I swiped the screen and pressed it to my ear. "Hello?" I said, my voice hoarse. "Alex," she said, her voice sounding different, calmer, almost apologetic. "We need to talk." I didn't respond at first. Part of me was still angry, still furious with her. But another part of me, a part one hated, wondered if there was any chance of salvaging even a shred of dignity from this mess. "About what?" I finally managed to say, my tone cautious. "I've been thinking about everything," she said. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need to tell you something." I frowned, sitting up in bed as the weight of her words settled into my chest. "What is it?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Alex, I don't even know how to say this, but I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt the room tilt, and for a moment, I was completely motionless. The words spun around in my head, colliding with each other as I tried to make sense of what she'd just said. "You're, what?" I croaked, my voice barely audible. "Pregnant," she repeated, her voice tight, as though she were holding back tears. "And it's Jason's." I don't know what to do, Alex. I never planned for this to happen. It did. I sat there, stunned. My mind was struggling to process the reality of the situation. Amanda, my wife, who had betrayed me, who had destroyed everything, was now telling me that she was carrying Jason's child. The weight of her admission crushed me. I felt nauseous, the bile rising in my throat. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and jagged. "So, what? You think telling me this is going to change anything? That I'm going to come rushing back to you? To the woman who betrayed me, who slept with another man behind my back, and now has his baby?" Amanda's voice wavered as she spoke. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Alex. You have to believe me." I was confused. I was confused? I interrupted, my anger rising again. "Is that your excuse? You weren't confused when you were sleeping with him, Amanda. You weren't confused when you were texting him, sneaking around behind my back. You knew exactly what you were doing." I was pacing now, unable to keep still. My thoughts were a tangled mess, swirling around in my mind, but all I could focus on was the sickening realization that Amanda had destroyed everything, and now, she was trying to drag me into her mess even further. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Alex," Amanda said, her voice quieter now. "I just need you to understand that I didn't know what else to do. I was lost. And I made some horrible choices. But, this is happening, whether we like it or not." The silence between us stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could hear her breathing on the other end, waiting for me to say something, anything. But what could I say? What could I possibly say to this woman who had broken every ounce of trust we'd built? "I don't know what you want from me, Amanda," I said, my voice now distant, cold. "You've already made your choices. And now I'm making mine." Her voice faltered again. "Alex, please. I know this is hard, but I can't do this alone. I need you to at least consider it. The baby. The future." The absurdity of it all nearly made me laugh again, but instead, I just felt a deep, hollow ache in my chest. The future? What future was she even talking about? There was no future for us. Not after everything that had happened. "I don't know what you expect me to do," I said, my voice quieter now. "You've made your decision. And now you'll have to live with it. You're not getting anything from me, Amanda. Not sympathy, not forgiveness. Not anything." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Okay. I understand. I'm sorry for everything, Alex. But I still need you to know that I'm not asking for you to come back. I'm just asking for your understanding. That's all." I hung up the phone without another word. The weight of her words, the admission that she was pregnant, carrying Jason's child, had left me reeling. But it wasn't just the pregnancy. It was everything that had led up to this moment. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal. I felt like a part of me had died. There was no going back from this. I couldn't unknow what I knew. I couldn't unfeel the pain that was now buried deep inside me. But at the same time, I realized something that surprised me, something I didn't expect. I was free. Free from the suffocating grip of a relationship that had turned toxic. Free from the false hope of things ever going back to what they were. I was free to rebuild my life, to move forward, to heal. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only choice I had left. The days following that phone call felt like I was walking through a fog. Amanda's words lingered in my mind, and no matter how much I tried to push them away, they kept coming back. I couldn't get the image of her, my wife, pregnant with Jason's child, out of my head. It was like a constant, gnawing ache that wouldn't go away. But as the days passed, something else began to take root, a cold, unshakable resolve. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let her betrayal turn me into someone bitter, someone who couldn't move on. The path forward was blurry, but I knew I had to take the first step. So, I threw myself into work. I spent my days drowning in projects, focusing on the tasks at hand, anything to distract myself from the sinking feeling in my chest. But no matter how hard I tried to stay busy, my mind always returned to Amanda. 2 weeks had passed since our last conversation when I got an unexpected text. It was from Jason. "Alex, we need to talk." My first instinct was to ignore it, to block him out the way I had done with Amanda. But something in me snapped. I wasn't running from this anymore. I wasn't going to let them think they could just get away with everything. Not after everything they had put me through. I texted back, "Where?" The words felt hollow, as if I were trying to convince myself I wasn't still shaking with anger. He replied almost immediately, "Meet me at the old garage. The one by the scrapyard." I didn't hesitate. I got into my car, my grip tight on the steering wheel, and drove out to the place where Jason had worked for years, the place where we'd both spent countless hours fixing up cars in the past. The irony wasn't lost on me. it felt like the perfect setting for a confrontation, like everything in my life had led me here. When I arrived, Jason was leaning against the rusted walls of the garage, arms crossed, looking more uncomfortable than I had ever seen him. He glanced up when I pulled in but didn't move. I parked and walked over to him, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice low but firm. Jason swallowed, then shoved his hands into his pockets. "I need to tell you the truth, man. About everything. It's not just you that's been hurt here." I scoffed, disbelief flooding through me. "Really? You think I'm the only one who's been hurt in all this?" He winced but pressed on. "I never meant for this to happen, Alex. I swear. I didn't plan to fall for her. I didn't know what was going on with you too, but I do now. And I feel like I owe you something more than just apologies." I stepped forward, my chest tight with anger. "Owe me? You owe me more than you'll ever know. You betrayed me, Jason. You knew she was married. You knew how important our relationship was, and you still went behind my back." Jason's face hardened, and for a moment, I thought he might fight back. But instead, he hung his head. "I know. I've been a scumbag. I didn't know what else to do. Things with Amanda, she was lonely. I saw it. I didn't want to be the guy who stood by and did nothing. And somewhere along the way, I got attached." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream at him and punch him until the anger inside of me was gone. But in that moment, something unexpected happened. I realized that he wasn't the enemy here. He was just as much a victim of Amanda's manipulation as I was. He had been duped too, played just like I had. "You think this makes it okay?" I said quietly, though the anger had drained from my voice. "You think you can just apologize, and everything will be fine?" Jason looked up at me, his expression genuine. "No, man. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I didn't want this to happen. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." I was quiet for a long time, letting the words sink in. Part of me wanted to rage, to demand an explanation for everything, but another part of me was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of feeling consumed by the anger and the hurt. I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. "I don't know what's worse," I finally said, my voice softer now. "The fact that you and Amanda did this, or the fact that she used both of us to fill some void in her life. She didn't give a damn about either of us. She just wanted someone to make her feel alive again." Jason nodded, looking down. "I guess we were both just distractions." "Yeah," I muttered. "We were. But that's over now. You need to stay away from her, Jason. She's not worth it. She'll never be the woman either of us thought she was. And as for me," I paused, my throat tight. "I'm done with her. I'm done with both of you." Jason gave a small, regretful nod. "I get it. I won't bother you again, Alex. I won't." I didn't even bother saying goodbye. I just turned and walked back to my car. The weight of the past weeks hung heavy on me, but in that moment, I felt something else. Something that had been missing for so long. I felt free. I drove home in a daze, my thoughts scattered. The conversation with Jason had been unexpected, far more civil than I had imagined. It wasn't about forgiveness, it wasn't about reconciliation, but something about it had felt like closure. For the first time in weeks, the tight knot in my chest had loosened. I didn't know where the road ahead would take me, but I knew it was my choice now. I was done with Amanda, done with the lies, done with the betrayal. As I walked through the front door of the house, the emptiness hit me. The place that once felt like home now felt like a museum of my past. The echoes of laughter, the quiet moments we had shared, it all seemed like it belonged to someone else. It was hard to accept that everything I had known for so many years had crumbled, but there was something undeniably freeing in it. I wasn't trapped in that false reality anymore. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of whiskey, and poured myself a drink. I hadn't had much of an appetite lately, but I needed something to dull the edges of my thoughts. The glass trembled in my hand as I took a long sip. My mind wandered to the last time I had felt this kind of numbness. It was years ago, before Amanda and I had even met. The loss of innocence, the disillusionment of love. It was the same feeling, but now, it was sharp, real, and raw. It felt like the final layer of protection had been peeled away. As I sat there, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, I heard the sound of footsteps outside the front door. My first instinct was to ignore it, to tell myself it was nothing. But the footfalls grew louder, closer, and before I could think twice, there was a knock at the door. I froze. For a split second, I thought it might be Amanda. But that seemed impossible. After everything that had happened, why would she come here? Why would she even bother? I set the glass down slowly, my hands shaking slightly, and walked toward the door. I didn't know what to expect, but when I opened it, I was completely unprepared for what I saw. It was her. Amanda stood on the other side, her face pale, eyes wide, like she was in shock. She was holding something in her arms, something small, wrapped in a blanket. "Alex," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you." I stared at her for a moment, speechless. The last time we spoke, I had told her I was done. I had told her to leave me alone. And yet here she was, standing on my doorstep, like everything that had happened didn't matter. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, my voice low, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I know I don't deserve anything from you," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But please, just listen." I was about to close the door, about to walk away from this one final moment with her, when she took a step forward, almost pleading. "Alex, please. I can't do this without you. I don't know what else to say. The truth is, Jason left me. He said he couldn't do it. He told me he couldn't be the father. So, I came here. I thought maybe you could help me." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. After everything, after the lies, after the betrayal, Amanda was now standing here, asking for my help. The anger, the disbelief, the exhaustion, it all hit me at once. "What do you mean, you can't do this?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. I broke off, unable to find the words. "You've already chosen, Amanda. You chose Jason, you chose this life. I'm not part of your story anymore. I'm not a backup." Her face twisted, and I saw the desperation in her eyes. "I know I messed up, Alex. I know I hurt you. But this baby. I can't do this alone. I don't want to do this alone. I need you." I stood there, staring at her, trying to process what she was asking. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her to leave, to slam the door in her face and never look back. But the other part, the part that had loved her once, was still there, buried deep down, hidden beneath the layers of anger and betrayal. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "I'm not doing this. You made your choices. You live with them. You don't get to come here and expect me to clean up the mess you made." Her lip trembled as she opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "You're on your own, Amanda. I'm done. I'm done trying to fix things that can't be fixed. You chose Jason. You choose him now." With one final, shaky breath, I closed the door gently, the sound of the lock clicking in place echoing through the silence of the house. I stood there for a moment, my back against the door, the weight of the world pressing against me. But in that moment, something shifted. The last tie had been severed. There was no going back, no more running from the past. The future was mine to shape, to define. I took a deep breath and walked away from the door. The house felt different now, empty, yes, but no longer suffocating. I wasn't trapped in the lies anymore. The only person I had to worry about was me. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something that surprised me. I was free.